Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from the UN Global Compact. Dear panelists, esteemed audience, and everyone who's taking part in this conversation. My name is Jan-Willem Schijgrond. I head up the UN Global Compact Netherlands, and in my free time, I'm also head of government and public affairs for Philips. Today, we're going to cover the topic of stakeholder inclusion, a topic very close to our heart in the Netherlands and in the UN Global Compact Netherlands, something we've been working on for years. And it gives me great pleasure that we are able to organize an event about this today. About a year ago, we also had an event during the UN Global Compact Leadership Summit about stakeholder inclusion. And when we were at the beginning of our journey to turn this into a more structured approach. And in the meantime, in the last year, we have now published a report, which we've launched on our website, about stakeholder inclusion. What we did is we brought together researchers and experts about how they engage with stakeholders and how they include them, and how we can use that to actually accelerate the adoption of the SDGs. And with this session today, we would like to share with you the learnings of this report and also help you go to the next level of stakeholder inclusion and give companies the toolkits and especially the tools and the need to actually start working on this. Now, if we can motivate more business actors around the world to improve the inclusion of stakeholders, I really believe that we can accelerate the transition towards the SDGs and make an impact. Now, with that, let me take you to the agenda for today and show you what a fantastic panel we have and a program we have ahead of us in this hour. Can you please share the next slide? So after my opening remarks, I will hand the floor to Jaap Winter, who's a partner at Filion Leadership and Governance and a task force member of the report to uncover the concept of stakeholder capitalism. Jaap will then move to Nicolette Lone of Tosca, also one of the co-authors of the report, who will introduce the innovative and globally applicable model of stakeholder inclusion. Then, handing it back to Jaap Winter again, we'll have a fireside chat with speakers from PostNL, Randstad, and DSM on how they have advanced stakeholder inclusion in their organizations and what challenges, but also opportunities and wins they have engaged and encountered on the way. Finally, hand it back to Nicolette Lone and Camille Capassi Malagodi from the Young Professionals programs, who will share with us their ideas on how we can move on from here, use the tools, and become more strategic in how we include stakeholders in everything we do about the SDGs. With this, I would like to thank everyone for joining this session and invite Jaap Winters to start the discussions of today. Thank you, Jaap. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jan-Willem. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon about talking about an important topic, stakeholder capitalism. The societal ecological changes that we face in the world, the challenges to people and planet are, I think, unprecedented. Where in the past people could flee to better or more resourceful places, now there is actually nowhere left to go. The Earth itself, as a living system, is challenged and exhausted. Similarly, our human societies are under enormous pressure because of issues such as social inequality, precarious work, and human rights challenges. In all of this, business plays a role. Over the last 50 years or so, more and more it has become accepted that business can work for its own financial success that is ultimately payable to shareholders. The social and ecological cost of doing business were deemed to be externalities for which business was not responsible. This shareholder capitalism has created an artificial disconnect between business and society. The COVID pandemic has shown that this disconnect is not just artificial, but in fact it is an illusion. Big parts of business have been affected by the pandemic and lockdown measures and can only survive through massive government support. And at the same time, business is also needed and crucial to help solve the crisis by producing protecting gear, respirators, and ultimately vaccines. Business and society are deeply connected, the COVID crisis shows us. The company as a legal form of doing business is a powerful invention. By attracting financial capital that is rewarded when there is success, companies can achieve things that neither governments or individuals can. And this bolsters human qualities such as courage, perseverance, and creativity. The core challenge in light of the relentlessness of our multi-crisis reality of today is that these qualities and the power of the companies can generate are to be used to help solve the problems of society and planet, and not to cause them. This is what the purpose of business should be, putting itself to work for what people and planet need. Now, many companies have already taken this turn, and we will talk with a few of them today in the panel. My personal view is that this should no longer depend on the personal choice or preference of the leadership of a company, but should be the standard for all business. And it should not just be a story, but it should determine the core of the company's strategy and its business operations. And this is new for many of us. It is uncharted territory. We need to explore how this can be done. We need to learn from our mistakes, and slowly and gradually we will get better at it. Doing this requires that companies no longer see their shareholders as their sole stakeholder to serve. As companies will have to become aware of the broader impact they have in society, they will also need to relate to a variety of stakeholders that are affected by the company. They include not only direct stakeholders such as employees and creditors that traditionally are recognized to some extent in corporate law, but also indirect stakeholders representing communities in which the company operates and other interests related to areas such as human rights and environment and climate. This will indeed require innovation to develop new ways of stakeholder dialogue and possibly also of stakeholder governance. The upside is that business will learn from its stakeholders what the real concerns are that need to be addressed. Listening to stakeholders is crucial in order to improve your impact in society. And we will hear from our panelists today how their companies have fared so far. In organizational theory, we know the concept of what we call learning anxiety. Faced with something new, with change, people often resist. Having to learn new ways of doing and being creates anxiety. First of all, anxiety about letting go of established practices that have worked so far, of current habits and ways of thinking. And secondly, about the risk that you do not yet know whether you will do well in the new context, of looming incompetence and related loss of identity. We also know that we typically can overcome this learning anxiety when our survival anxiety is bigger than indeed our learning anxiety. If it is not, and as long as it is not, then defensive responses to learning will prevail, like denial, scapegoating, dodging, and bargaining. And I think we see a lot of that in today's world. It seems to me, and that's where I would want to close, that our survival anxiety should by now be so high given our societal and ecological challenges that we must by now have the courage to learn new ways for business to take responsibility for its impact in society. Stakeholder dialogue is crucial to help achieve this. So let's start to learn how we should really do this. Over to you, Nicolette.
Thank you very much, Jaap. And it's my great pleasure and honor to be presenting to you today. And during the next few minutes, I will guide you through the publication on stakeholder inclusion. Now, as so eloquently already explained by Jaap Winter, we need to shift from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism in order to reach the objectives of the SDGs. And a business leader who's well known for his bold leadership on sustainability is Feike Sijbesma. And as you can see here, he emphasizes the role of business in creating a better world and links this to stakeholder inclusion. Global Compact Network Netherlands also realized that stakeholder inclusion is crucial for companies and wanted to provide them with a research publication, and therefore assigned a task force to conduct the research Jan-Willem Schreefland already referred to. The aim of the research was to better understand what leading companies are doing on stakeholder inclusion and what we can learn from them, to identify best practices and areas for improvement, and to come up with a structure for stakeholder inclusion. There were 3 pillars in our research, which you can see here on the slide: interviews, surveys, and desk research. Thank you. And you can find the report in the library of UN Global Compact. Now, if you have any questions during my presentation, I kindly ask you to use the chat function. The result of the research was, amongst others, a comprehensive and pragmatic model for stakeholder inclusion. And we are hoping that this model may help companies worldwide to implement and further improve stakeholder inclusion in order to accelerate on the SDGs. The model, which is presented here, identifies 6 aspects of stakeholder inclusion, which are all interrelated. The first aspect is motivation. This is the start of stakeholder inclusion and answers the question, why should I include stakeholders in my business? Is the company driven by adhering to the legal minimum, or does the company take up the role as steward in its sector and actively collaborates with stakeholders to work on systemic change? The second aspect is targets and is an indication of what a company strives to accomplish. The orientation can vary from targets that are directly related to legal obligations to targets that are more longer term and are related to the purpose of the company. The third aspect is types of stakeholders. The categories we identified in this model are derived from the OECD guidelines with minor moderations. The first type are the internal stakeholders, which are the employees of the company. The second type, also called first-tier stakeholders, are the stakeholders with a direct contractual or transaction-based relationship with the company, such as customers, first-line suppliers, and capital providers. The third type are the stakeholders that have the power to directly and significantly influence the company, also called the second-tier stakeholders. Examples are media, competitors, rating agencies, and NGOs. And the fourth type of stakeholders are the ones who lack the power to directly influence the company, but are affected by the company's activities. This group is called the third-tier stakeholders, and examples are future generations or marginalized communities. The fourth aspect is approaches. This aspect describes the process of stakeholder inclusion and can vary from providing information to partnering with stakeholders. And during our research, we noticed that many companies inform or even consult stakeholders in a so-called stakeholder dialogue. The challenge for true stakeholder inclusion is to go beyond this dialogue and to include stakeholders in the decision-making process of the company and to build long-term relationships based on trust and equality in order to partner with different types of stakeholders to solve societal problems. The fifth aspect is outcomes and describes what the company wants to achieve with stakeholder inclusion. This aspect can vary from gaining insight into the interests and motivations of the stakeholders to validation from stakeholders on how the company deals with certain issues to ultimately creating integrated value, which means that collaboration with stakeholders is crucial for resolving certain issues. And the sixth aspect is disclosure and deals with the way companies disclose information to stakeholders that is relevant to them. It may vary from the bare legal minimum to disclosures on impact, both positive and negative, on stakeholders. Each of the aspects have 4 underlying gears, and it's important to note that these gears are interrelated. Our model assumes that there is a positive correlation between the 6 aspects and that there is a maturity level. This graph shows the flow of the gears. Gear 1 starts with the question, why should I do it? Am I obliged to do this from a legal perspective? Gear 2 starts with the question, what's in it for me? Companies in this phase look at the business case of a specific issue. Gear 3 starts with the question, how can I help you? Companies in this phase take a broader perspective on a specific issue and look at it from a shared value vision. And Gear 4 involves the stewardship approach, where the issue a company wants to solve becomes centric and not the company or the direct stakeholders of the company themselves. For matter of time, I will not go into more detail of each aspect, but would like to guide you through the structure of the report. Based on our research, we were able to give a description of the meaning of each aspect for each gear. In this way, the report can act as a kind of taxonomy for stakeholder inclusion. The table in this slide is an example of these descriptions. You will also find best practices of the companies we included in our research, quotes of business leaders, and some elaborations on relevant themes such as double materiality and long-term value creation. We have also included a short list of helpful questions to ask, and we hope these questions can serve as a quick scan to assess the maturity of your own company on stakeholder inclusion. With that said, I would like to end my presentation and thank you very much for your attention and give the floor back to Jaap Winter, who will moderate today's panel.
Thank you very much, Nicolette. Very clear an explanation of how you started to work about and build up this model for stakeholder inclusion. Very clear and very concise. As I said, we have a great panel this afternoon to talk us through about their own experience with their companies about stakeholder dialogue and inclusion. We have Marielle van Spronsen, Program Manager Corporate Responsibility at PostNL. We have Willemijn Brouwer, Product Marketing Lead at DSM, and Marlo Leende, Senior Manager Global Sustainability at Randstad Group. Marielle, let us start with you. At PostNL, how did PostNL set up dialogues with stakeholders, and how does is it included in the way that you want to go about with your corporation?
Yes, in the last years, we did more and more around stakeholder management. And on the next slide, yeah, we see the ESG. ESG plays an important role in the realization of our ambition to be the favored deliverer. And on the next slide, you will see that you see the sustainable development goals. And if you look to our strategy, it's focused on creating both short and long-term value for our stakeholders through our key material topics. And we have directly linked our long-term impact to the sustainable development goals set by the United Nations. Because we look at the long-term impact we have along the entire value chain, we focus on 4 SDGs, SDG 8 and 13, where we have a direct influence on, and SDG 9 and 12, where we have an indirect influence on. And for each target, we evaluated whether our impact is related to doing good or avoiding harm. And if you look to the relation to stakeholder management, the SDGs you see here came by stakeholder involvement internally, but also externally. So it was a well-made decision. We can go to the next slide. Here you see our stakeholder landscape. And as a listed company with a long and proud history in the Netherlands, we have a huge stakeholder landscape. We engage with our stakeholders in different ways, on different levels and on different topics to better understand their interests and the way our activities affects their decision-making process. So you can think about stakeholder dialogues, roundtables about topics, but of course also in our daily work, customer contact, that's also a way of communicating with your stakeholders, social media, etc., etc. So it's a very huge, complex topics, and from all the stakeholders we get the information we need so we can improve ourselves. So and all that information helps us to decide what's most material and where we can make the difference for our stakeholders. On the next slide, we see the business case for the sustainability is threefold, and here I'm about sustainable business. And more stakeholders want to do business only with companies that act sustainable when it comes to environmental and social topics. A better long-term business decision means that integrating sustainability in business decision is financially beneficial in the long run. And on certain topics, PostNL can make a real difference with the progress on sustainability. Sustainability is a relevant factor for the company's reputation. So this was the last slide of my presentation. And as you see, a stakeholder management is more than organizing a stakeholder event. It is more a way of acting in your daily business and do something with the information you get.
Thank you, Marielle. As a question to you, what has been, in your experience, the power of these stakeholder dialogues? How has it helped you in your strategic value creation? Can you share some thoughts?
Yeah, if you look to the dialogues, what is really helps is how can I say it in a short way? No, how it really helps is that you're knowing that you're taking the right steps. So it is a nice way to present your thoughts, have a discussion about your thoughts, and see how other people see it. So it's a mirror. The dialogues always give a lot of inspiration, and it helps you making next steps. And also, if you look to the outcomes, I think the outcomes of the stakeholder dialogues also helps giving. It's also a proof that our stakeholder wants us, and we're a stakeholder-driven company. So as an example, if I go to the board and I say, we have to take the right step, why? And I can show that I'm not the only one, but we're with many people, we say we go right. That really helps to make the next step in your strategy. Yeah. In your way of working.
Yeah. And what has been a struggle or a challenge that you had to face in developing this structure of stakeholder dialogues? What was hard?
What is hard in the beginning is that I think years ago, we all did for the annual report, we did stakeholder dialogues. Oh, that's something we need to do. What is hard is to get everyone on the same page, how important stakeholder management is. So it's not a thing you do on paper, it's something that really gives you value, to something to build on. So taking everybody internally with you for the idea to use all the stakeholder input, I think that was a little bit of struggle.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maria. Let's go to Willemijn Brouwers of DSM, well known for your scores or your challenges in the sustainable field, well recognized as well as a company. How did DSM go about engaging with stakeholders, including them in your decision making?
Yeah, thanks, Jaap. Thanks for inviting us, and thank you, Ms. Lone, for already recognizing our honorary chairman, Fijke Siebesma, I think well known among many of the participants in today's webinar. Well, how did this go about? I would say already 10, 12 years ago, we realized that Royal DSM, which is actually a former coal mining company and now one of the biggest vitamin suppliers in the world, that you don't have a license to operate if you don't look at different stakeholders. So we really look at four particular ones, or four categories we define. So it's our employees, it's our customers, our shareholders, but certainly also society at large. And what we have said many times is that you really cannot be successful or call yourself successful as a company in a world that fails. And that's one of the reasons why we also have the summit, of course, today, is to discuss all these challenges. And all these different stakeholders are truly necessary, not only to put us as a company a mirror at times on the direction where we go, but actually also to build with us and co-create insights how to go forward. So I think we clearly moved now in 2021 and in the previous years to a model in which it's not only something as a tick in the box, something you need to do, something which you need to do for your annual report or your corporate reputation, but actually a strategic tool to move your company forward and to become future-proof, both with your strategy, but also, and I think that's even more important, in the impact you create.
And in setting up these dialogues, have you combined various dialogues with different stakeholders, or are you going about them with individual stakeholders in different ways? How does it work within DSM?
Yeah, well, indeed, there are different groups, different type of dialogues. There are many of our shareholders who we and customers with whom we speak really frequently, quarterly, monthly, to discuss both our current strategy as the performance going forward. Our employees, I think, are in the end the real driver, and I think not surprisingly, also in the research, Global Compact Netherlands issued one of the key or maybe the most important stakeholder every day to hold the company accountable for its direction. So I would say that's that daily feedback you're getting. A group which is maybe sometimes forgotten or not seen in first or second is indeed that society at large. Well, that's in the end, I think, particularly nowadays, looking also at a bit of a polarized world that we see right now, extremely important to know for whom you're making your products, your services, but also whose challenges you try to change. So there are different formats, back to your question, different frequencies. And I think in the end, the blend of these different stakeholders is also extremely important to really get all the different insights on the table to make the right decision.
Yeah, and also for DSM, how, in your experience, has this become powerful for DSM in driving your own sustainability agenda? How's that worked?
Yeah, well, where I'm personally extremely proud of is that we no longer have a sustainability agenda, because since 2018, sustainability and DSM's purpose is the core of our strategy. So the core of our global strategy to be purpose-led, performance-driven. And those might sound as very nice marketing taglines that you put on a report, but in practice, that really means that these stakeholders together define the direction of the company and define really how we want to do well by doing good. So it's not longer an either or, but I would say a truly inclusive and therefore holistic approach. And you can say that, but the actually real proof of the pudding is by doing it. So purpose, sustainability, stakeholder engagement, it's really not about talking and having great panels, but actually about doing. And that's what I'm committed to every day.
Yeah, that's a good reminder for us also in this panel.
How ironic, right?
Yes, exactly. But what has been a struggle or a challenge for you, for DSM, in getting as far as you seem to be now? What was hard in the process?
Well, I think something that needed to grow and is now really flourishing is that as a company and as human beings working for a company, because a company in the end is a living being, we need to dare to be vulnerable. So as a stock listed company, you might think you always have to have the answers for your investors, your shareholders, but also for your customers, your employees. Well, actually, in practice, it's also just fine to tell that you sometimes don't have the answer, but you're really willing to look for it. And when you then really, engage your stakeholders to think with you and not see that really as a flaw or something that can be used against you, that's actually when you get the best dialogue. So I think that's something that gradually got into our system, in our DNA, to be open and transparent on the things we want to change, but also on the things we are not yet sure how to best do that, and to do that together, because it's really, I think, a myth that one company, one organization can tackle many of the sustainability issues that we discussed today. So let's be honest and transparent with each other for the collective solution in the end.
Yeah. It's a nice way of you addressing this learning anxiety problem. You have to be open and accept that you don't know everything yet, and see to learn together with others how to do this. Thanks, Willemijn.
You're very welcome.
To Marlou Leenders of Randstad. Marlou, how's this been for Randstad? How is Randstad setting up dialogues and engaging with different types of stakeholders?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting Randstad and me to discuss stakeholder inclusion. And I'm really proud. I've worked now for 15 years for the company, and what I've seen in those 15 years and up till now is that we have very strong core values, and they form the foundation also of stakeholder inclusion. Our founder already said, well, you need a purpose as a company, you need to add value to society. Otherwise, you don't have a reason to exist. And especially one of the core values, it's simultaneous promotion of all interests, I think says it all. Everybody has to benefit from our services of what we add. And so not only the shareholders, not only profit, not only one type of stakeholder group, but everybody. And it also links, of course, to the type of business we have as an HR company. Also, if people are satisfied with the way you work, they influence each other. The candidates we place, the clients, it's all linked together, society. We also, like Willemijn said, chose to name society as large as one of the stakeholders next to talent, employees, our clients and investors, of course. So I believe that it all starts with living it and talking about it. So it will end up eventually in every decision you make.
And then how did you, or how is Randstad now organizing dialogues or different ways of engaging with stakeholders, with this variety of stakeholders? How are you doing it?
Well, of course, we have our regular meetings and updates and client surveys and all the things I think are more hygiene factors. You need to do them. It's regular. It's not something extra. We have a materiality matrix. We update it. We talk to people about our strategy. But what I think is, what really makes a difference if you work together. We have what we call social programs. And those programs start, well, small, but are linked to sustainable development goals and are really linked to some social challenges in a country, like helping people with a disability on the labor market, or addressing women gender equality. And then you work in partnerships together with governments, clients, talent, to try to find out what works best to address the needs of all groups.
And Malou, have you seen in your practice and the way that you've experienced that these dialogues and these discussions you have with different stakeholders are actually affecting the decision making in the corporation? Is it changing? And is it making the corporation more powerful in what it wants to achieve?
Yes and no. I think because it's so well integrated from the start that it doesn't necessarily something new or that it changed, but I think the pressure, like you started today, the challenges we face are much, much bigger. So the pressure is bigger. We don't have any time to waste anymore, also for social challenges. So I think in that way it does influence and puts it higher on the agenda to really speed up.
Yeah. I have a question for each of the three of you to close off this short panel session, and that is, where do you think, or do you think it is feasible that at some stage these various dialogues with stakeholders, as you have explained them, are going to evolve into the next step, as Nicolette in the model explained, about more stronger involvement and even partnership? Where does stakeholder dialogue become stakeholder governance, and that not just shareholders are a decision-making stakeholder in the governance of the company, but other stakeholders have some shape or form as well? what do you think is going to happen? And do you have these discussions within your company already? Who wants to share? I saw Willemijn nodding, so I give the floor to you first.
Oh, thank you, Jaap. Well, I think the answer is it will happen, whether you like it or not. So as you see already in the report, it's a maturity curve. And next to that, it's a maturity curve for any company, how it goes about its stakeholders. It's also in the end really about your license to operate. And I think many studies show that companies who don't engage really frequently, strongly with these different stakeholders, internally and externally, will clearly just miss the boat on what a future looking business should look like. Whether that will end up in official governance models, like the way our shareholders vote about certain resolutions versus the employees versus the customers, I'm not entirely sure. But what I do think is that even sometimes the unofficial or more implicit decision-making taking place in the stakeholder dialogues in the end highly influences the official decision-making processes, if you like. So whether it will be very explicit or a little bit more implicit, in the end, I think the outcome will be the same. Stakeholders will gain only a bigger seat at the table moving forward.
Thanks, Willemijn. Marielle or Marlou?
Yeah, Marielle here. Is it good, Marlou?
Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Marielle.
I totally agree with what Willemijn is saying. At PostNL, we don't have the discussions yet, but I think that we really listen to all our stakeholders. So I think, it's important that we take what they say and want that we take it in account. And I think that is what counts the most. Yeah, and that's what I want to say about it. So I don't think it should be really officially. I don't know if it helps. If we really feel the urge doing it right now, and we're doing it, so I think that's all what counts in the end.
Thanks, Marielle. Finally, Marlou, your sense?
Yeah, well, we don't have discussions on this yet. I think it would be really interesting if it would be in a governance model like the shareholders have now. Of course, you already have workers' councils or other ways of your employees or talent to influence. But I do believe that if your purpose and the reason you are on this planet as a company, if you add the right value, you have to take into account all the interests. Otherwise, you don't add value. But at this point, at the end, it's Randstad and its shareholders, of course, that make the decision. Yeah, but I would welcome it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a big challenge, and I said, as Willemijn said, people or companies will be on their different routes of maturity and engaging and getting there. Thank you very much, all the three of you, for your enlightening examples of your companies. Good luck and with all the challenges that lies ahead with this. And it's great to hear about companies that are leading the pack in this way. Nicolette, back to you.
Yes, thank you very much. And well, during this last few minutes, I would like to make some closing remarks and guide you through some key action steps that you might be able to take after hearing these great examples. And it was a real joy to listen to this panel because, well, here you can see the recommendations that we made based on our research. These are included in the publication as well. And I already heard a few of them mentioned during the panel. And well, to highlight a few of them is, well, ensure that stakeholder engagement is part of the strategy process. I think that's crucial for companies who want to engage with their stakeholders, who want to be part of solving the societal challenges at the moment, as so nicely laid down by the SDGs, that this is all about purpose and needs to be embedded in a strategy process. Another thing that was that came out of the research as well was Although companies who have an international focus can have a very strong head office, it's at the local level where the change really happens. So engage local governments, local trade unions and NGOs, look at what on the ground is happening, because that's where you see that also the issues arise and most of the mistakes are made. And another thing is include employees as stakeholders and beyond employee issues only. In the Netherlands, we have a model which was already referred to with the Workers' Council, but the employees are the eyes and the ears of the organization. They see where things are going wrong, where opportunities also lie, with which partners to work with. So really involve them in your stakeholder inclusion. So with that said, all the recommendations can be read in the publication. I would like to give the floor to Camilla Capassi Malagodi. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Sorry if I'm wrong. Who is part of the Young Professional Program of Global Compact Netherlands.
Thank you very much, Nicolette. Thank you for the opportunity to be here as well. So yes, I'm Camila. Together with Linda van der Leest, we are team captains of the YPP, the Young Professionals Program, a global compact leadership development program for young employees. And these people that you're seeing on the screen, they are my team. And the YPP wanted to take the stakeholder inclusion model to the next level. Can you move to the next slide, please? So my question to you is, are you ready to shift to the gears of your company's stakeholder inclusion activities? I'm here to ask you if you would be interested to deep dive in this model and contribute to our research, and of course, supporting us by scanning the QR code that you see on the screen. You can engage and you fill in a survey that will help us to provide these answers to you and take the model to the next level. Contributing with that, we want to provide you work instructions to help you to apply the model, also understand where is your company stand at the moment and how to move to the next gears. And perhaps even we want to even to translate the model to a practical application. So me and our team are really looking forward to your contribution and engagement. And saying that, well, I give the word back to Nicolette. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Camilla. And well, we already had a few meetings on your project, and I'm very enthusiastic about the dynamics and the energy that these young professionals are bringing to the table to move the model to the next step. So thank you very much for that, and I hope everybody will join in this survey. I would like to thank all participants, to the panelists, the moderator Jaap Winter, Jan Willem, who introduced us. Thank you very much for your participation on this event. And of course, all the people who joined this webinar. We truly hope that stakeholder inclusion and the model and the research and the best practices that we shared today help you include stakeholders in your business, because that's what is really needed if we want to accelerate on the SDGs. So reach out to us if you have any further questions. Look for the publication on the UN Global Compact library site. And we hope this session was inspirational for you. And thank you very much.